it's kind of interesting to think about what do cities need for the 21st century. And one of the things, I mean, we're here in a park, we're in Kensington Gardens, and the late Cedric Price, who was one of the most visionary architects of the 20th century, needs to definitely be remembered. And I think it would be wonderful to dedicate actually DLD in London about the cities to the memory of the great Cedric Price. Cedric Price was at the forefront of architecture ever since he founded his office in the early 60s. He came up with this wonderful idea of the Fun Palace. It's interesting also to talk about the Fun Palace, maybe here in Kensington Gardens, because obviously very nearby here at the Serpentine there was the Crystal Palace, 1851. And Cedric wanted in East London to develop a kind of a Fun Palace, which would have been an institution together with the theatre director John Littlewood, where all the disciplines could meet. It would have been a very much a participatory and also interactive institution, which would have a limited lifespan. He said it would be an experiment over 10 years, so it would not be an institution which would become permanent. And that was his idea of the early 60s. But Cedric also, throughout his work, has actually pioneered lots of different ideas about the city. What we have today, of course, to learn from are his writings, are his drawings. He's created an amazing body of ideas. And one of the things, towards the very end of his life, he was actually he was invited to develop a project for New York City. So he looked at New York City and he said, what does a big 21st century metropolis need? And he came to the conclusion that what it really needs is oxygen. He said there should be a part of the city, where we have actually an empty situation, where we can just have oxygen, where we can breathe, where we can think. And he wanted to inject such an oxygen zone, into New York City. And I think that's obviously parks. Parks are the oxygen of a city, and we're here in one of the greatest parks in the world, and I think that's very much a dimension Cedric said. He also encouraged us to actually maybe think a neologism, because somehow he said, the word city has been overused, it has been used for so many different things, so maybe it would be interesting to think about a new word which would replace city, and maybe that's a nice thing, but on the occasion of DLD city, we can continue this thread of thought of Cedric and start to think what could be a neologism, what could be a new word for city for the 21st century. So, homage to Cedric Price.